While at the Pentagon, the military appeared completely aloof from the events unfolding, at the White House, the coordination activities seemed to be concentrating under the firm authority of Vice President Cheney. In fact, the so-called NORAD tapes have revealed that the White House had ground-to-air missiles of their own.
Hello there, Washington approach. Make sure that the center does not have anything above our airspace also. The Secret Service is going to start shooting at anything in the air.
Yeah, I just got a call from Washington. They said that if there's anything above their airspace, the Secret Service is going to free fire.
This exchange, which took place around 10 a.m., sheds a whole new light on one of the most controversial issues of 9/11. The sworn testimony by Secretary of Transportation Norman Mineta to the 9/11 Commission on May 2003. Mineta was being questioned about the events that took place in the PIOC, the underground bunker in the White House, from where Dick Cheney took charge of the situation after convincing President Bush to stay away from Washington for safety reasons. To fully understand the implications of this case, two things must be kept in mind. One is that according to the official version, Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon at 9:37, while Flight United 93 crashed in Pennsylvania at 10:03. It's on this 26-minute window that hinges the whole credibility of the Vice President on his true role in the September 11 attacks. The second thing to keep in mind is that the order to shoot down civilian airliners came from the President through the Vice President only after the Pentagon had been hit.
When the third plane hit the Pentagon, the magnitude of the attacks grew dramatically. We didn't know if there were other planes that had been hijacked. So the first decision I made on Air Force One was to give our Air Force orders to shoot down commercial aircraft that did not respond.
This means that any order given before the Pentagon was hit could not have been a shoot-down order. However, as Chairman Hamilton was inquiring about the shoot-down order, something unexpected emerged from Mineta on the plane that hit the Pentagon.
And we had that order given, I think it was by the President, that authorized the shooting down of commercial aircraft that were suspected to be controlled by terrorists. Were you there when that order was given?
No, I was not. I was made aware of it during the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Mineta's deposition posed a major problem. Since the shoot-down order was given only after the Pentagon was hit, Cheney's order sounded very much like one not to shoot down the plane. Hamilton immediately suggested that what Mineta had witnessed was also a shoot-down order.
Let me see if I understand. The plane that was headed toward the Pentagon and was some miles away, there was an order to shoot that plane down.
Well, I don't know that specifically.
Commissioner Romer picked up where Hamilton left off.
You said, if I understood you correctly, that you were not in the room when the decision was made to what you inferred was a decision made to attempt to shoot down Flight 77 before it crashed into the Pentagon. Is that correct?
I didn't know about the shooting, the order to shoot down.
Commissioner Romer then tried to suggest a different solution.
Was there another line of communication between the Vice President and you said you saw Mr. Richard Clark on your way in? Was Clark running an operations center as well on that day?
Dick was in the Situation Room.
So there was a Situation Room making decisions about what was going to happen on shoot-downs as well as the PIOC?
I don't believe they were making any decisions. I think they were more information gathering from various agencies.
Could it have been in the Situation Room where somebody in the Situation Room recommended to shoot down and the Vice President agreed to that?
Commissioner Romer, I would assume that a decision of that nature would have had to be made at a much higher level than the people who were in the Situation Room.
Unable to resolve the discrepancy, the 9/11 Commission took a series of dramatic steps. Firstly, they simply excluded Minetta's testimony from the final report. In the 560 pages of the report, Norman Mineta is mentioned only once, in an unrelated circumstance. His presence in the PIOC is never even acknowledged, and the video segment you have just seen has been removed from the Commission's official website, and it's no longer available. Secondly, the 9/11 Commission moved Dick Cheney's arrival in the PIOC to after the Pentagon had been hit. From the final report we read, the Vice President entered the underground tunnel leading to the shelter at 9:37, which is the same time the Pentagon was hit. The Commission stated that Dick Cheney remained in the tunnel for more than 20 minutes trying to complete a call to the President, and that he only entered the PIOC at 9:58. Why would the Vice President spend more than 20 minutes in a tunnel trying to make a phone call when the PIOC is fully equipped with all kinds of telephones has never been explained. As a third step, the Commission moved the exchange with the young man to after 10 o'clock and rewrote it in order to reconcile it with the official version. From the final report we read, at some time between 10:10 and 10:15, a military aide told the Vice President and others that the aircraft was 80 miles out. Vice President Cheney was asked for authority to engage the aircraft. The military aide returned a few minutes later and said the aircraft was 60 miles out. He again asked for authorization to engage. The Vice President again said yes. In summary, the window of time Mineta described as during the time of the plane coming into the Pentagon had become 10:10 to 10:15 in the Commission report. The 50 miles out reference by Mineta had become 80 and 60 miles out in the report. The 30 miles out and 10 miles out mentions by Mineta were removed, and the unspecified order by Dick Cheney to the young man had become a straightforward shoot-down order. And now that the episode had been moved to after 10 o'clock, the Commission could maintain that the exchange Mineta had witnessed was referring to Flight 93 when the shoot-down order was already in place, and not to the flight that hit the Pentagon. There was only one problem with this version of the events. Norman Mineta had to be terribly confused in his recollections, as he could not have been with the Vice President in the PIOC at the time the Pentagon was hit. To support this theory, the debunkers point at a statement by Mineta, who said he arrived at the White House while it was being evacuated. Since the official order of the evacuation came at 9:45, contend the debunkers, Mineta could not have been with the Vice President in the PIOC at the time the Pentagon was hit.
Stanno evacuando la Casa Bianca quando ci sono arrivato. Quindi questa informazione ci permette di localizzare cronologicamente il momento in cui Mineta è entrato alla Casa Bianca.
But in the same deposition, Mineta also stated that he arrived at the PIOC at about 9:20 a.m. So it's presumable that he was referring to the people that had already started leaving the White House before the official order of evacuation was given. In fact, at 9:52, CNN reported that a slow evacuation of the White House had started some 30 minutes earlier, much before the official order was given. Furthermore, a Secret Service timeline compiled by the 9/11 Commission staff shows that the 30 miles out and 10 miles out calls came at 9:31 and 9:34 respectively. This clearly places the exchange Mineta witnessed before 9:37. At the same time, the main problem with placing Cheney's removal from his office at 9:37 is Dick Cheney himself. On September 16, 5 days after the events, Cheney stated on Meet the Press that he was taken into the bunker shortly after the second tower was hit, which happened at 9:03.
So we turned on the television and watched for a few minutes and then actually saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center. I talked to the president while I was there over the next several minutes watching developments on television, and as we started to get organized to figure out what to do, my Secret Service agents came in, and they hoisted me up and moved me very rapidly down the hallway, down some stairs, through some doors, and down some more stairs into an underground facility. And they did that because they'd received a report that an airplane was headed for the White House.
There are also several highly credible testimonies that place Dick Cheney's removal from his office shortly after 9:03. ABC News quoted White House photographer David Borer saying that just after 9 a.m., Vice President Dick Cheney was in his West Wing office when 2 or 3 agents came in and told him, "Sir, you have to come with us."
Agents came inside the office and said, "Sir, you have to come with us."
The New York Times reported the same story. At 9:03 a.m., as Vice President Cheney was staring at the TV screen, the second hijacked airliner exploded against the Twin Towers. At that moment, the Secret Service grabbed him and hurried him down to Peoc. Richard Clarke, in his book Against All Enemies, wrote that soon after the second tower was hit, Cheney began to gather up his papers. As I left, I counted 8 Secret Service agents ready to move to the Peoc. President Bush's secretary, Ashley Estes, stated, "As the second plane hit, it didn't really click exactly what happened. Then I heard a noise, like a body bumping a door. I looked out into a hallway and saw the vice president with the Secret Service. They had kind of lifted him up and were running with him. At that point, it definitely registered what it was." Former Undersecretary of Defense Eric Edelman testified, "I was already down in the Peoc with the vice president when we got word there had been an explosion at the Pentagon." And even after 10 years, Dick Cheney has not changed his story one bit.
As we watched, we saw the second plane strike, and then we knew it was a terrorist attack. Then my Secret Service agent, lead agent, came bursting through the door in my office and said, "Sir, we have to leave now."
While all these testimonies clearly placed Dick Cheney in the Peoc by the time the Pentagon was hit, the 9/11 Commission has admitted that the 9:37 entry time by Dick Cheney in the tunnel was based on alarm data which is no longer retrievable. And, most important of all, Mineta himself recalls being with the vice president by the time the Pentagon was hit.
So then someone came in and said, "Mr. Vice President, there's been an explosion at the Pentagon."
In the course of time, Secretary Mineta has never changed his story, repeatedly confirming both the location and the timing of the event.
And then all of a sudden, as I was talking to him, he said, I lost the bogey, lost the target. I said, "Well, where is it?" He said, "Well, somewhere between Roslyn and National Airport." And about that time, someone broke into the conversation. Said, "Mr. Secretary, we just had a confirmation from a Arlington County police officer saying that he saw an American Airlines plane go into the Pentagon."
That the exchange Mineta witnessed was referring to the plane that hit the Pentagon should be beyond doubt at this point. But we still don't know what was the order given by Dick Cheney to the young military, whose name turned out to be Douglas Cochran. In 2010, some researchers tracked down Mr. Cochran and asked him to clarify what the orders by Dick Cheney were. Mr. Cochran confirmed being the person involved in the exchange, but declined to elaborate. He simply stated that everything that happened on that day has been well documented. The 9/11 Commission report is the authoritative narrative on the events of 9/11. I have nothing to add. In fact, it turns out that in 2004, the 9/11 Commission did interview Douglas Cochran, military aide to the Vice President, on the inbound aircraft and on the shoot-down language used. But his interview has been withdrawn from public access, and to this day, it remains classified. While we wait for that document to be declassified, we can piece together the information we already have. 1. The sky over Washington is Class Bravo, restricted airspace. It's called Prohibited Area 56. In order to enter it, an airplane must have clearance from air traffic controllers, active two-way radio communications, and its transponder must be on. Otherwise, it's to be considered hostile and it could be shot down. 2. As explained by former Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, in a time of crisis, the Washington airspace goes into an actual lockdown.
You would do what is being done, and that is closing off the entire airspace so that you, in effect, the whole Washington area is a no-fly zone, so that any planes that can't identify themselves and get into that are to be shot down.
3. The White House had ground-to-air missiles of their own.
Hello there, Washington approach. Make sure that the center does not have anything above our airspace also. The Secret Service is going to start shooting at anything in the air.
4. As the unknown airplane was approaching the protected airspace, it had no clearance from air traffic controllers, no radio communications active, and the transponder was off.
He said, "We're tracking an airplane coming in, but the transponder has been turned off. So we don't have any identification on the airplane, We know it's coming in fast.
A representation of the FAA radar scope based on information obtained by 2020 shows the plane headed straight for what is known as P-56, Prohibited Airspace 56, which covers the White House and the Capitol, at a speed of about 500 miles an hour, with no radio contact whatsoever.
It would be unprecedented for a commercial plane to come screaming through your airspace at that kind of speed, unidentified, without making some type of communication.
This made it a perfect candidate for a shoot-down, especially after 2 towers in New York had already been hit by an airplane. 5. The Secret Service had known about the incoming airplane for the last 30 minutes, so it's presumable they would have been ready to shoot it down if it became necessary.
One of them approximately 30 minutes out, one of them approximately 45 minutes out. So we knew we had some time, but little time.
Our supervisor picked up our line to the White House and started relaying to them the information. We have an unidentified, very fast-moving aircraft inbound toward your vicinity.
Despite all this, no one moved a finger as the unknown threat kept rushing towards the Capitol.
Someone came in and said to the Vice President, there's a plane out about 50 miles out.
As the one nearest us got closer and closer, 6 minutes out, 5 minutes out.
The same person said to the Vice President, Mr. Vice President, there's a plane 30 miles out.
The Washington controllers came up on the speakerphone. They started counting down 10 miles to the White House.
The young man said, Mr. Vice President, the plane's 10 miles out. Do the orders still stand? And the Vice President sort of whipped his head around and said, of course they do.
9 miles from the White House. 8 miles to the White House.
7 miles west, and it went 6, 5, 4.
All the way down to 1 mile from the White House.
But no missile was fired. Undisturbed, the plane turned around and went on to strike the Pentagon, causing the death of at least 125 people between military and civilians on the ground. Question: the Secret Service knew about the incoming plane for the last 30 minutes, was following it on radar, had the means to shoot it down, and should have done so in order to protect the Capitol, but they didn't. Why? In regards to the exchange between Cheney and the young man, can you suggest anything different from an order not to shoot down the plane as it was approaching Washington's protected airspace?
On September 11, 2001, I had returned back from maternity leave. I had to get Elijah situated in daycare. I walked into the building. I had to clear Elijah to go to the area. There were some things that they wanted me to take care of prior to me taking him to the daycare. I sat down at the computer to actually turn the computer on. As soon as I pressed the button, boom. So at that particular time, based off what happened, I thought I had triggered a bomb.
One of the things I know that you're probably concerned about, in reception and integration at the Pentagon, we're told that this is one of the safest buildings in all of the United States of America. As part of your reception and integration, you're given a tour of the Pentagon, you're told particular things about the Pentagon. So I'm believing I'm working in one of the safest buildings in all of the United States of America. But on that particular day, there was no alarms, there was no alerts, and there was no warnings. Now, backstepping, while I worked at the Pentagon, they had drills so often that it became very annoying. It's like a maze in there, and when you have to get a document to one place in the building to the other end of the building, and you have a very short period of time to do it, and then there's, some type of training or some type of alert or some kind of practice drill, and you had to stop to participate in that drill, yes, it becomes very annoying. So here we have this particular day, and there was no alarms, no warning, and I just asked myself, what is the probability on that particular day, no alarms, no alerts, no nothing on that one particular day?